Worst case, I think we do read the comment if she can't get
Okay,
in.
you're live now.
Okay, I will first adjourn the special meeting that we have just had, an executive session, and call the regular school board meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda, this seems like a legacy item from before, which we aren't doing anymore. It says agenda approval, which we know is no longer our practice. So the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, on which we have the minutes from the September 8th board meeting, regular meeting, vouchers and payroll, personnel report, surplus report, and contracts. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda. This is Michelle.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, as usual, this is a roll call vote. Maria?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
And I for me. So that motion passes. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is citizen comments. And am I to understand that there is a citizen comment?
Yes, we have 3 people who are planning to give public comment, and 2 of them Kim will be reading, and the third she will come online and read their statement. So Kim?
Okay.
Okay, so the first one we have is from Mabel Bodell. And here's her comment. As a local physician, I continue to feel heartbroken to see the disproportionate number of Latinx dying at our Central Washington Hospital from COVID. Half the student body at the Wenatchee School District are Latinx. We will be able to open the schools only once we truly address the health disparities which affect our Latinx community in a disproportionate higher rate. Until then, there will be no safe plan. So that was her comment.
Thank you.
The next comment is from James Dodge. And his comment is, hey, my name is JT Dodge and I'm the president of the Wenatchee High School ASB. I want to start out by saying I appreciate all of your hard work in such unstable times as this. Your dedication to all of the students and teachers across the district is being felt. With all of the measures you've had to put in place to keep us safe and address different situations this year, I know a deficit in the budget has arisen. Because of this, you are unfortunately thinking that clubs may have to be canceled. As ASB president and a student at the high school, I cannot stress enough that this should be the latest or the last possible measure taken. In this time of Corona, we students are feeling the strain of only getting the lecture part of the school and none of the socializing. In a recent survey that I put out to all students, an overwhelming majority reported that the thing they missed most from our school was socializing and being with friends. Clubs are a great way to combat this, as students come together to create a community where they can see friends and experience an essential part of school. Beyond the great benefit of clubs, there is also a desire for them. In the same survey, the question, would you be willing to participate in a club this year, was posed, and about 70% of the responses said yes. I've shared this survey with you all to look at in your own time if you would like to. As we march forward into the school year, we need to keep opportunities open to everyone to be able to express themselves to friends and teachers, as well as to build school culture. COVID may be the biggest test this district has ever had, but with the presence of clubs marching beside us, we are sure to overcome it and appear stronger on the other side. That's it.
And Karina Vegavilla is here. So Karina, if you would take your camera or turn on your camera. There you are.
Hello. Good evening, board members. I am representing the Immigrant and Latinx Solidarity Group. We were formed in response to the disproportionately high number of COVID-19 cases within the Latinx community in Chilana and Douglas counties, and the lack of a holistic plan from the health district to respond to the crisis. The group coordinates with a diverse group of local nonprofit, community-based, and grassroots organizations to ensure that every effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19 considers and responds to the unique needs of the immigrant and Latinx communities in our region. The priority of our group is the health and safety of our community, and especially of those workers who are in the agricultural industry, because they are often marginalized and left out of the decision-making process impacting them. We participate in local, regional, and state initiatives that address COVID-19, and the group is made up of educators, community advocates, lawyers, business leaders, college students, volunteers, and healthcare workers. Since early June, the group has met to identify the gaps in the response to COVID-19 and propose specific and systemic changes to address the health disparities in our counties. I'd like to share with the board a report that came out last week from the CDC that found that the majority of children, teens, and young adults who die from COVID are Hispanic, Black, and Native American. Researchers found that there was a staggering racial disparity in more than 390,000 coronavirus cases and 121 deaths among people under the age of 21 that were reported to the CDC. The report points to social disparities such as crowded living conditions, food and housing insecurity, wealth and educational gaps, and racial discrimination as factors that may have contributed to these racial inequalities. And the study authors said that young people who are racial or ethnic minorities and have underlying conditions and their caregivers would benefit from clear and consistent COVID-19 preventing messages. Unfortunately, that is not what we have seen in our community. We have been involved in this since June, and we're still very concerned that we have not done enough to protect our most vulnerable population. And we would like to request that the board considers scientific data in their decision to reopen schools. We want to see schools reopen, but we want to make sure that we're taking care of those who are most at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone who commented tonight, and especially our student ASB president, I believe he said. And I'm wondering if the ASB are they meeting virtually? The ASB has always been an important part of our school board meetings, schools in session. And I think we ought to consider inviting those students to participate in our board meetings virtually, of course. But I don't know why we should give that up when it's been such a great part of our process for a long time. So
That sounds good. I'll reach out to Mr. Anderson, Dr. Kalahar, and see if we can get that up and running at both the schools and have the report up and running for the board.
that would be fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome. Good suggestion.
Okay, so moving on. Now we are, we have a special presentation from our SROs.
Yeah. So Mark Helm, do you want to introduce the gentlemen, our school resource officers?
Absolutely. So board, as you know, we've been just updating the SRO contract and board policies, and we wanted to make sure that we shared with you a couple things the SROs have been doing. We have Jared Reinfeld and Jared Shepard. So they're going to go through a little PowerPoint that's going to share with you the training they receive, what they do in a normal year, and then what they did kind of last year once COVID hit, and what their goals are for this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared. I'm not sure which one is sharing his screen, and they're going to go through a short PowerPoint.
I'm looking for Reinfeld right now. He's the tech guy.
Hey, there we go.
Oh, yeah. It's like IS has a hold of my computer right now. I see it all over the screen.
Scary.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Grown kind of fond of these Zoom meetings. Perfect. One more screen back. There we go. So we put this slideshow together, obviously by the date a couple weeks ago. And this was the total number of calls that we handled last year, essentially from September 1st up until the closure on March 16th. And we broke it down by school. It's kind of self-explanatory, you know, obviously large high school, the majority of our calls are going to be there with 62 calls. 11 at West Side and Wenatchee Valley Tech. Pioneer with 27, 14 at Orchard, and 8 at Foothills. And then, you know, a handful at each of the elementary schools. Jared can talk about numbers beforehand. That was about October, I think, is when I started the new position as school resource officer. So Jared's more familiar with the numbers from the past couple of years. You there?
You might be muted.
Should be bottom left.
Am I there now?
There we go. Gotcha.
Okay. So as you can see from the total number of calls, we had 167 calls in this shortened school year. I know I've reviewed this before in other meetings, but I can recall back to 2 years ago presenting for a regular school year. We responded basically, or I did when I was by myself, to from 250 to about 280. And I'd probably say, give or take 20 on each end of that. I don't know which way. A lot of things are handled without creating a call. These are actually calls for service that we created through Rivercom, our dispatch center, when schools contacted us with issues. So I really think that the numbers probably, if we had a regular school year, typically come spring through graduation, the end of the year, it kind of picks up and gets busy. So I think we would have seen, unfortunately, kind of an increase there at the end of last year. So I really think it was kind of on par with previous school years. And I think in the future we'll do, you know, a better job of tracking those calls. I've actually am planning to bring back, it'll help once school's back in, when we get back to school, of a weekly report that I was doing when we had the risk management, when Adam Bergstrom was still with the district. I would send him a weekly report basically on what I did. And that included stuff that wasn't just a call for service. You know, just maybe presenting to a class at a school or anything like that was included in those reports. So I have plans on, once we get back to school, to bring that back in to show all those other things that we're doing. So go ahead, Jared, do you want to move on?
Yeah, well, just to touch on that real quick too. So this is all calls for service regarding criminal activity. This doesn't include anything that we might do outside of that. Just visits to elementary, middle school, high school to hang out with the kids, play kickball, or Foursquare at recess, or, you know, we did some safety talks for Castle Rock. So this is strictly just criminal activity calls that we generated that may or may not require a report, or something that may or may not have been turned over to a prosecutor, but something that rose above, the majority of the time rose above the level of school discipline. So out of those calls, we broke it down a little bit more. I just called them serious calls because I think these are the things that we as officers, and I'm sure staff, administrators, and parents are concerned about as well. Assaults, threats, drug complaints, sex offenses, and burglaries. We actually had a burglary in the high school. So those obviously are the calls that we're really concerned about. Yeah, it's about all I've got for that. You have anything to add to that, Jared?
No. Like Jared said, I can add a little, I guess, just calling them serious calls. I mean, we treat every call seriously that we handle. But a lot of the other calls are, you know, people might call them petty theft calls or just random traffic incidents. We get a lot of calls from neighborhoods around the schools of traffic complaints and speeding. And so we do get calls generated for stuff like that. So obviously assaults and drugs and stuff like that are more serious. I will say at the beginning of last school year, I think I even talked to Jared about it when he came on, was, gosh, the school year has been kind of slow, and was wondering, you know, well, this is a good thing if we aren't having these issues, but it obviously picked up again. So once again, we take all the calls seriously and work them to the end. So.
Yeah, and that's, I guess it's all about call classification, is how we, what we refer to it as, how we nature a call, just what we call it, a burglary versus a traffic offense, or a theft versus an assist public call. So yeah, we did, if you go back for just a second, I did want to touch on, after school let out, there was obviously a lot of concern for some students, and just getting in touch with them. It was beginning of the distance learning, and a lot of kids weren't checking in. So we were assisting all the schools with that. We essentially started a case number, and we may have done just one check where we checked in on a student. Hey, is everything going okay? Teachers are saying you haven't checked on. You know, just want to make sure there aren't any problems. Is there anything we can do to help you, type thing? We might have started a case number for 1 up to 5 to 10, depending on how many students the schools called in about. So we were out doing a lot of what we would consider to be welfare checks, just checking on the kids, making sure that they were doing okay themselves. And then, of course, making sure that they, you know, had all the resources that they need to get their school affairs in order, which included helping to deliver devices and getting signed contracts back to the schools, making sure they had hotspots or, you know, internet or that sort of thing as well. And just, you know, kind of trying to encourage them. So yeah, that's what we did through the COVID closure and summer break. We just kind of rotated through the schools and handed out lunches, gave us the opportunity to meet with the kids, actually physically see them, see how they're doing, and which was really cool, because obviously in our position, we form a lot of relationships with a lot of different students. So it was really nice to be able to see a lot of those students coming to get their lunches and just check in with them. You know, some of them no concern whatsoever, and some of them high concern. So it was good to be there and hang out with them. We had a pretty high caseload towards the end of the school year. By that, you know, just open cases that we were trying to wrap up. So we spent a good amount of time finishing reports. Of course, nobody likes to do reports. So that was always going to get put on the back burner if they're not super important. Yeah, and then I think Jared and I both had certain students that we checked in on, and still maintain a relationship with them. A lot of them were high risk students. That, you know, obviously the school, got to give a lot of credit to the staff at the schools, because they know the kids real well. And then once we get involved, you know, it kind of becomes, I think, personal for us as well. So there's a few students that we keep in touch with. You know, we know they're high risk and, you know, may have been involved in some traumatic experiences. And so it was good checking in on them as well. You want to talk about some of the online training we did, Jared?
Yeah, so we did attend an online training this summer at the beginning of summer. And it was through the ESD, I think 105 in Yakima. And they provided training to make sure everybody's in compliance with current RCWs. So we did spend a week with all that training, which actually, learned quite a bit from it. Learned some things that, maybe we can't do this that way. And so that was a good training. We do have an upcoming training that we're going to be attending is a school safety conference. It's a national school safety conference for school administrators, school resource officers, and school security. So that's upcoming, I think in November, is a 4 or 5 day Zoom meeting training. We also have plans on attending the National School Resource Officers Association basic SRO training, which is a week long. We were signed up for one for the summer, but it got canceled due to COVID. So we will be looking for another one. They're starting to offer them more via Zoom, so we don't have to be in person. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to get into one of those and get that training. I have attended the same group, the National Association of School Resource Officers. I attended their conference a couple of years ago for a week, which was very beneficial. They provide great training and information on all kinds of topics. So I'm looking forward to getting that training. Do you have anything, Jared?
I don't.
Okay. Maybe you can hit on the next topic there.
Yeah, so obviously we kind of anticipated there being some issues with kids on Zoom and doing their, training online, distance learning. We have some new, fairly new cyberbullying laws. So we help kind of create part of a PowerPoint that Mr. Niguez was going to use for the high school, also disseminated that to the middle schools so that students were pretty informed about what the law was and what they could and could not get away with in regards to cyberbullying and harassment, which a lot of that stuff happens on social media, of course, but we've seen it happening within their distance learning as well. So that's something we tried to address. I think on the next slide, I'm going to let Jared talk to you about the first topic there.
Okay. So as we were getting closer to the beginning of the school year and understanding that staff would be doing home visits with these students, Jared and I talked quite a bit about the safety aspect of it and concerns for staff going out into our community and neighborhoods where maybe they aren't aware of activity that takes place in some certain areas. So we were able to come up with a kind of a tracking system, which I think now that I look back at it, tracking isn't a great word because I think people look at that and wonder why they're being monitored, what they're doing. But the idea behind it was for the staff member to be able to input where they're going to do their visit, who they're going to visit, and the date, and be able to put information like the staff member's phone number in there in case of emergency, we could contact them. So we created this form. We've done, I think as of today, it shows in here 200 checks. Basically a quick background check on family members. And I think today we're up over 360 checks that we've done. That's not us attending the home visits, but on some families, we have found some safety concerns with staff going there. And so it's been nice to work with the staff and go out on some of these visits and just attend with them. I actually went on 3 of them today. And it was all very positive interaction with the families. So I think it's been very successful, what we've done. Again, I think the title of it, of the tracking sheet, has pushed some people away. And so we're still kind of working out some bugs on getting everybody to put in their visits ahead of time, so we have time to do those checks. If you have anything, Jared, go ahead.
No, just real quick. Big shout out to Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Royster too. They've come up with these really, I guess, inspirational notes that they're having us hand out to students, and it's been awesome. Just getting out to see the students and, you know, having them recognized for actually participating in their distance learning and doing a good job with it as well. So for the opportunity for us to get out and meet with the families and meet with the students and, you know, give them that attaboy, keep it up, you're doing good, has been really, really cool. We've had a ton of positive interactions with families and students, and so we're really happy about that. I think that's it for me.
Okay. The next couple of topics here, we do have some cyberbullying, cyber stalking happening. I don't think all of it's been reported through schools, but it's involving students in schools. So we've taken those on. We've been pretty busy with the checks, and so some of these investigations are taking longer. But it's just the nature of the beast. Kids and devices, I think there's sometimes a lack of control with some of them on things that they say. So we are currently working on some of those investigations. And I think the topic of the ongoing major criminal investigations, I think some of the cyberbullying is kind of in with that, but I don't know if everyone's aware, we've had some issues with fire at Wenatchee High School over the summer. Some things being lit on fire. I have another school today I was at with a small, I don't know what to call it, a little device that burned something on the sidewalk. So it's pretty concerning. And I will tell you that we're spending time on that, and actually a detective has taken on part of that investigation as well. So we're really hoping to figure out who's doing that and take care of that situation. So the personal relationships with students, Jared kind of hit on it already. I'll double down on it. Delivering these messages to kids from the school has been amazing. We don't work in the positive a lot. A lot of what we deal with is negative. So it's been great to go knock on somebody's door and, you know, have their family there and see how proud these parents are, and the kids get excited. Today I had a parent that was almost in tears, just so proud of their kid and the hard work they're doing. So once again, I love doing it, and if anybody else has them, I'm willing to find the time to deliver those positive messages to students, because the interaction we have is great. Not only from the concern when they open the door and see us in uniform, but to be able to tell them it's okay, you know, this is why we're here. It's really, really refreshing for us and the families. So that's been great.
We do have some, just for a sake of time, we do have some ideas for stuff that we'd like to do in the future. Obviously, we're gonna, have to get permission for some of this stuff. But we came up with some ideas of some things that we'd like to do just to kind of help the kids out right now. Maybe an online Q&A where they would submit questions through their teachers. Teachers can send them to us, and then, we'll answer in a video format. Like Maddie, a fifth grader at Lewis and Clark, asked us this question, and here's the answer type thing. Thought it might be kind of fun for the kids and us to do that. I still have aspirations to assist in PE classes. I'm willing to let kids kick a ball at me in a free kick competition out on the soccer field, or do some timed races, of course I will participate in those as well. And maybe like a wiffle ball home run derby or something like that. If we could do that safely, with social distancing or whatever, and get some kids that are interested in getting outside and doing some of that stuff, love to do some of that. Jared and I have talked about educational safety videos for elementary kids, like bike and skateboard safety, proper use of sidewalks, crosswalks. Jared had a great idea about reading a book video for elementary age students that maybe the teachers could use if the kids needed a break from learning and just wanted to sit down and chill for a minute and listen to a book or something like that. And just continue to work with staff at middle school and high school age levels. Of course, elementary school is always welcome, but we find that our interactions with the high school and middle school counselors tend to be a little bit closer than they do with the elementary age kids. So, and we're of course open to any ideas that anybody has. We miss seeing the students, miss seeing the staff. So we're looking at any ways that we can get involved and stay in touch with everybody. We're open to just about everything.
And is it blank?
It is blank.
We kind of hit on the training at the beginning. I can't figure out why this slide won't show up, but just to kind of review, we did attend the required training for SROs through the ESD there in Yakima. And then again, November, we have the school safety conference we'll be attending, and hopefully in the near future, that SRO basic class. And we'll always be looking for more training or anything we can do to improve on what we're doing. And I mean, that includes recommendations from all of you too. So we're open. But that's all we've got, unless Jared has something else.
I'm good. Open up the floor for some questions.
I do have a question. So do either of you speak Spanish?
No.
No.
So I'm curious, how do you interact with families that don't have English as their first language?
Well, we have quite a bit of experience working at the patrol level on the streets, responding to calls. It can be very difficult, just like it is for anyone that doesn't speak another language. But we have officers that speak Spanish that we'll bring in. We do utilize the language line where you can get on the phone and have a translator online with you to communicate that way, or use family members that are present to communicate. Middle school age kids are great communicators and we can use them. So I'll be the first to admit, it would be nice to speak Spanish or speak another language, but I don't have that ability to learn it, that fast. So it would be nice, but we get by. I haven't run into a situation where I've had to turn around and walk away because of communication.
Okay.
I have a question. When you guys were talking about the current SRO duties and activities that are being fulfilled at this point, Officer Reinfeld, you said that, I don't know if this was during home visits, you said you did some background checks, and you specifically said the word background checks. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, what that means.
So we're doing these checks off of the home visits that staff are entering into the tracking page. So we're able to view the student that they're going to visit, and then we get the parents' names of that student, and we can check in our local database for history of any crime, or it basically covers things that people have reported, if they've reported incidents or they've been a suspect in a crime. is we can kind of go back and look at that history, and it goes back years. But, you know, we're basically looking for the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years. If there's anything that seems concerning or a safety concern that a staff member would be going to that house, we're able to note on the chart that either it's all okay, go ahead and do your visit, or you should take one of us with you. And then the staff member contacts us and we set up a time to go on the visit with them. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to say it's like a background check. It's not a background check like for employment. It's just a quick safety check.
Yeah, it's not extensive. We're not running and you know, and triple I or getting into requesting stuff from other agencies or anything of that nature. It's just checking our local database just to see if there's any safety concerns. And a lot of that involves just around drug complaints, anything violent, domestics or assaults, or gang activity, especially if any of the family members have been involved with gangs. And it's just, it literally takes probably a few minutes if we're able to pull the name up real quick. And we just want to ensure that the staff that's going out to visit with family is safe. Because there are, we know, unfortunately, some kids in the district that, you know, live in homes that we wouldn't consider to be safe environments.
Other
So-
questions?
I have a question. You guys rotate between schools, is that correct? Or you?
Yeah. So last year we kind of split it up from middle schools and high schools, where when Jared came on, did you start in the middle schools, Jared?
They did.
Yeah. So Jared did the middle schools for basically through Christmas break, and I focused at the high school level. And then we split up duties at the elementary schools. And I think it worked good to break it up a little bit. And then we switched after Christmas break. So Jared could, you know, get up to the high school and build relationships there, staff and students. And I switched to the middle schools. And I think the rotation's good to have our faces move around the district through the building. So it's not like we have a stationary position that we're at, because we're moving around quite a bit, but it seemed to work pretty good.
It sounded like your calls for service were relatively on par for, and I don't know what historic average you were using. Have you seen any decrease in just activity because of your presence at the schools?
Go ahead, Jared.
I was just going to say that's something we've definitely discussed, the difference in a lower activity just because we're there more, and kids are wondering if we're, you know, actually watching them or what they're doing, or just the fact that we're there. Of course, we learn through use of force training that officer presence is always the number one use of force. Just us being there and our pure presence in full uniform tends to gain compliance, but also deter crime. So we've spoken about that, and I don't know if there's a way that we could actually find that number to be true or not true. But
so you're not necessarily like generating calls while you're there at any different level.
I'm not, Jared.
I think it's rare that happens where you actually are sitting there and see something occur. I mean, it has happened, and we've dealt with those situations, but you know, most of it's reactionary. But I think the more we do have a presence there, the less stuff happens. And I can say, for example, we had an incident at the high school level last year where there were students that were planning to fight in the school in a large group, and it was gang related, but we were there. And I was able to communicate to get other officers in the area for after school, because we had a student talking to us, giving us information on where things were going to happen. And it literally went from the school to across the street to the skate park, which is normal, and it never happened. So I think, you know, at those times when you get lucky and you're there and something's happening, it's great. So the more we can be present, I think numbers would go down.
Last question, I promise. Is there kind of in the training you're seeing, are there things, you know, I know we've got funding limits and policies and all that stuff, but are there ways the board could support your efforts more, or what would, in your perfect SRO world, what could we do? And COVID times aside.
You know, I think we try to meet best practices, and that's always changing. You know, annual change. If you go to annual training, there's going to be some things that you take out of there every year that are going to be different than the previous year. And I think that's the big benefit of being a member of NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers. They strive to be the absolute best as far as training for school resource officers in the country. It's a really large organization. They bring in top trainers and speakers. They've got an incredible attorney on staff that's available to you if you need. And I think the opportunity to attend that conference every year and choose the trainings that will apply best to either your lack of knowledge or something that may be particular to your region or area would be extremely beneficial. SRO Basic, that we're still trying to get in because of COVID, haven't been able to, has their class outline essentially deals with someone who's never been in a school environment before. And the topics, you know, teach you how to talk to kids and how to relate to them, how to form those relationships with students and staff members. And then, you know, it gets into the other topics of drugs and vaping in school and the more specific things. So I think, you know, the trainings that we're looking at attending here soon, I think that'll just add to our toolbox of things that we can rely on to fall within the current best practices. Jared?
Yeah, I think just that support of, you know, the help with, you know, if the board were to research it and see, oh, there's this training that the school resource officer should have, or we think it's important. Like I said before, we're open to doing anything to improve what we do. So I think just support like that, training, you know, obviously it comes up cost to training in that, but I think that the district and the city have a pretty good agreement and can work together on that stuff. So I would hope that we, like Jared said, can continue our education and what we're doing. So that would be great.
I just had another question about the data that you guys shared with us. I'm guessing there's probably larger data sets that has demographics and more specifics. Does that get shared with the board at some point? Because I know you guys collect data under RCW. So I'm just wondering when that would be shared with the district.
That might be a question that we'd have to get back to you on.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that works, getting that information, but we can definitely look into that and get back to the board on that.
Thank you.
I had a couple things. First of all, is just a comment. You know, I saw both Jared's and the springtime at lunch pickups at different schools. We would kind of just go different locations. And I think the presence of you guys, you know, in the school, even though kids weren't physically attending, was just, it was refreshing to see, you know, you guys being visible, engaging with the kids. And so that was really neat. The other thought I was thinking is in regards to the logs and the safety checks, is this something that we were doing prior to COVID? I'm thinking specifically with our migrant home visitors and our McKinney-Vento specialist. I started my career with Wenatchee School District as a migrant home visitor. And back then we would do blind visits. You don't know what environment we're walking into, who's going to be receiving you on the other end. So, you know, like I said, I don't know if this is something that was already in place prior to COVID, but I think it's a tool that we can continue to benefit even post-COVID with our, like I said, our McKinney-Vento liaison and our migrant home visitors.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't like a official thing that we would do. It was more just a case-by-case basis. And it was usually like I would just get contacted by a staff member that was going, and they actually had some concern and wanted somebody with them. And so I would go with them on those, but it wasn't a regular basis or anything near what we're doing now. And you know, sometimes it just takes, I'm already familiar with the family they're going to visit. And so it makes sense just to go, but to be doing all the checks that we're doing, we haven't done this before.
I'm just thinking as a, say, a migrant home visitor, if they check out, okay, just having that reassurance from your guys' end that, yeah, you're good. You know, you go in there with that peace of mind or that little bit more of a sense of security to know what you're kind of walking in. And I guess that was 15 years ago. So I'm not sure what the process is now.
Yeah, I think it would be, you know, even when school goes back and we have students back in school, I think it would be easy to continue what we're doing. And I think it makes sense just for the safety of everyone involved. So it wouldn't take so much time like it has now, because, you know, getting 20 to 40 home visits in the chart in a day gets a little overwhelming to try and get those checks done. But I don't see why we couldn't continue doing that and work more closely with those staff members doing those visits.
Yeah, I look at it kind of a social worker standpoint. My wife was a social worker before we moved here, and of course would have law enforcement go on a lot of calls with her. And so that's kind of how I view it, is, you know, the safety of the staff first and foremost. And I think I guess it's kind of a judgment call as far as Jared and I are concerned when we do the checks, and we might find some families that we know will be receptive to school, but won't be receptive to law enforcement, to where, you know, I've gone with staff and just stayed out of view, just 3 or 4 houses away, and just made sure that the staff was safe, but I didn't make my presence known because that wouldn't be welcome, and it wouldn't help the situation. The staff wouldn't be able to accomplish their goal of getting in touch with the family. So we've done that as well, just because we go, you know, say we would recommend that an SRO go with you doesn't mean that we're actually going up and knocking on the door. We're just there to make sure that everybody's safe. And ultimately the goal is to get the student or the family the resources they need. And we understand that aspect as well. Not everybody likes us.
I'll tell you, a group of people who absolutely appreciates the two of you are the building principals. Mike and Stacy are with our principals all the time, and it is a regular comment how invaluable your efforts have been during pre-pandemic and during the pandemic. Your outreach and the work you are doing with our students, the principals could not be more pleased with your all-in attitudes, that there's nothing that's outside of your scope right now that you're willing to help with. Like you had mentioned, Jared, that bringing out the, you know, positive notes to students, telling parents, wow, the kids are doing amazing. Just all those little things that you guys are making a difference for our kids, but our principals are super pleased with the efforts the two of you bring each and every day. And they just see you as such a valuable partner in what we're trying to do for our kids and our families and the community. So I know from their perspective, thank you. And from mine as well, appreciate your willingness to think about your jobs very differently, because this is not your normal kind of job, what you're doing right now. And you're both willing to really think about it super different than it was before. And I'm not sure every SRO would have been willing to really look at their jobs and say, no, I'd rather go back on the beat, as opposed to kind of doing more of this type of work that the two of you are explaining. So huge kudos to the two of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate
I
it.
have a comment and a question too, actually, and Jared kind of answered part of my question. Listening to you, you really exemplify teamwork, and that's kind of what Paul was saying too. And I just want to recognize that. And the way you put out a caring culture, I think, is also unusual and extremely important. And we really need to build that kind of trust within the community at all times. But having said that, and I think, Jared, you kind of answered it, but sometimes you stay out of sight. I was going to ask how often you find somebody putting up a barrier to you because of your uniform, and then how are you able to cope with that, or both of you?
I still take the kill 'em with kindness approach. One of the visits that I went on with some staff was to a known gang member's house. And he came to the door, he videotaped me the whole time. It was kind of, I believe, an act of intimidation. But I had some free Slurpee coupons to hand out that we were giving out with the Attaboy notes from Orchard. And I offered this gang member a free Slurpee at the end. And surprisingly, he took it. I was kind of thrown aback by that. And then come find out not too long ago, Jared had a great interaction with him as well. But it's always unnerving going to those houses and you see the gang writing on the side of the house and the signs in the backyard, and you know what they've been involved in and what they're capable of. And, I think going under the guise of a school resource officer, we actually have new uniforms on order here pretty soon. And we're pretty excited about them because it's going to set us apart from patrol. It's going to be a very professional look with polos and slacks. And so we're hoping that not only the students, but also their staff will recognize us in uniform as being school resource officers. And I think that goes a long ways, because I think ultimately, regardless of what run-ins you've had with the law, you still understand that, we're there to help. And that's what occurred with Jared and this gang member I was talking about the other day. So, you do the best you can, and we understand we can't reach everybody, but I think that the cooperation between administrators, staff, SROs, and students, I think we can surely do really well with that.
Well, thank you. Realistic, but kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Martin, I appreciate what you just said there. I think it was just a really honest presentation. It was just a really thoughtful, honest presentation about the work that you're doing and some of the pieces that are a part of our community. And you're just really honest about that. But I sincerely appreciate everything that the two of you have done for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
See you soon, team.
Yay.
You guys more than welcome to stay around, but you can also hit the road and go watch those Denver Nuggets beat the LA Lakers.
That would be nice.
Thanks. I'm going to stick with hockey.
Well, the Avalanche are already out, so I can't go there.
That's okay. I'm a Wings fan through and through.
Ugh.
I grew up in Michigan. What do you expect? It was great to see y'all. Thanks for having us. We don't see you very often, so it's good to see everybody again. And thanks for your questions. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Truly.
Everybody.
Okay. All righty. So next on our agenda is board communication. So are there any board members that wish to share communications since the last meeting with the rest of the board?
Laura, we have one action item. We have the resolution.
Oh my gosh.
You're okay.
I didn't.
You're good.
Okay, going back to, we have a resolution 08-20 district reopening suspension of policy on our agenda for action this evening. This is related to our change in operations due to the COVID pandemic, and the fact that some of our current policies would not allow us to act in a manner that we need to take action and do business for the district. So this is on our agenda. I believe everybody has seen this. This should be the second time, at least, that we've seen it. So is there a motion to approve resolution 08-20?
I will make a motion to approve resolution number 0820, district reopening suspension of policy.
I'll
And
second
I'm
it.
available to second that motion. A resolution 0820 as described.
Okay, we had 2 seconds on that.
Okay.
Double second.
Yep.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Okay, so we will do roll call vote on this item. Michelle,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
and I, for me too. Okay, so that motion carries. Now we will be going into board communication. Are there any board members that have communication they wish to share with the rest of the board?
I think, aren't we going to talk about our priorities for the assembly? This would be probably the time to do it.
Yeah, could I
I'll
just, I'm gonna do
second
one thing before that, because that sounds like a pretty intense item.
Yeah.
Our student ASB officer brought up the topic of lack of social interaction between students. I mean, he was talking about clubs, but I took that as, you know, an expression of the lack of students to communicate with each other outside of the regular classroom venue. And I'm just wondering if there are ways, because socializing has such great benefits for our mental health, and it feels like we focus quite a bit on, you know, the potential for bullying and, you know, negative things to happen, and without that socialization, we have things like, you know, suicide rates potentially going up, just mental health and in general deteriorating. I'm just wondering what creative ways we could facilitate students being able to communicate with each other, maybe during the classroom day. If we can't
Open the
do clubs,
schools.
you know, pardon me.
Should open the schools. Do what
Yes,
Amanda
open the
did.
schools. Wouldn't that be fabulous? That will be fabulous. Between now and then, is there? I'm just putting that out there because my heart just hurts for kids that feel isolated.
Yeah, I'd like to share that I know one of my daughters has, you know, that she can meet up with her friends on Zoom or some capacity outside of class time. So I hope that our students, our teens, our kids, you know, especially who are older, are taking advantage of, I know many of them have, you know, phones at the ready and are texting and social media and stuff, but, you know, but teenagers can Zoom, you know, with each other. And I think there's probably people doing that. I would encourage them to do that in safe spaces with their friends. But I also see teachers encouraging social interaction in the classroom too. And I know that's not the same as being in person, but I'm really impressed with how there is a certain amount of socialization that you can still do on Zoom, even in the classroom. So, you know,
It's
I
hard
don't
to
know
make
if you
that to
wanna
go
work with my
to.
kids.
Yeah, it's hard to make that the go-to though when they've spent 7 hours on a
Yeah.
screen or sort of tied down, and yeah, they've likely all have phones and House Party and whatever other apps and things that I don't even want to know about. I agree. It would be lovely to find a way to safely get everybody out doing stuff. I know I try and get my kids out participating in these socially distanced little soccer, basketball things as they can with friends, but I mean, it's not the same.
No. One of the things that I can do is reach out to especially our secondary principals and get a sense of what's going on. I was in an email string with Eric and some of the ASB talking about some potential for different type of activities that they're thinking about. So we'll have a report. Mike or I will report back at the next one, just some of the current thinking, because I know the students are looking for some different types of interaction, non-academic related. So at our next board meeting, we can report back on that.
That would be great. If it was purpose driven, even if it's for the purpose of improving mental health,
Mm-hmm.
or it was a service project, or it was something to bring people together.
Yeah.
That would be so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a few comments before the priorities.
Go ahead.
If you're taking just other types of comments. I sent a message to Kim today that I'm going to sign up for the WSD conference in November, but there is an early sign up deadline of October 2nd, where the district wouldn't have to pay as much. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in doing the conference. It's November 18th, 19th, and 20th with the pre-conference stuff on the 18th. I would just encourage you to kind of reach out to Kim. They have pre-conference, they have a law conference, they have a board boot camp for new members. They also have leadership and equity, which I think I'm personally interested in, and their law conference is really good. So anyway, just a plug for that. And also I appreciated our public comments tonight. I just wanted to also recognize that both Dr. Bodell and Dr. Vega Villa, bring up some really important concerns for the Latinx community. And I think we do have to be considering that, we're hoping to eventually open up the schools, but I think we also don't want to minimize sections of the community that feel like they might be at higher risk, and how that's either being addressed or not being addressed. So I don't want them to feel like their concerns are falling on deaf ears, because we usually can't comment on that right away. But I think
that's also why we're looking at a hybrid model as well, for anyone who's not comfortable coming back right away.
So anyway, I think they brought up some really valid concerns. So I just wanted to, just go back to their comments, and I appreciated the information that they shared. So anyway, that's all I have to share just about the conference and their comments.
Okay, then I will share my screen, which will have this really pretty legislative assembly document on it. I didn't.
It was there, Paul. Go ahead and
It
restart.
was there?
It's there. Yeah, it's there. I can see it.
Okay. It's
Looks
weird.
like
'cause
a
that-
spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's odd because now usually I can see it. All I'm seeing is my my
Probably
normal.
underneath another window on your screens, but we can see it. It
Okay,
says
as long as you guys can see it.
ranking.
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. Okay, so what we've done is, and Kim, jump on here because she's been working at this feverishly. Ask everybody to look in and select their top 10 from the legislative General Assembly that will convene on Friday. And what we did was color code the ones that are consistent across the board. As you'll see, early childhood had all five board members selected. 4 selected increased funding for high poverty schools, 2 for equity based, 2 for full funding basic education, 3 for special education, 2 for attract, recruit, and retain high quality diverse staff, and then 2 for review revisions of prototypical school model funding and formula, which is also was the top 3.
Hold on one second. Ron, did you see that note from Michelle? She's having trouble with the audio hearing. Don't know if there's anything you can do about that in the background.
Yeah, because I don't hear anything separate.
Okay.
Yeah, and my office is pretty quiet. So that's what we have here. Kim, and then the last 2 are also WASDA top 3s. There were some similarities in the levy authority, this gold looking one, that were similar to others. And I'll have to ask my phone a friend Kim here to jump in. Oh no, 2 people selected levy authority. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kim, that you would add?
No, I don't think so. I think I tried to go through and put the position number as well as whether it was a standing legislative position or new or amended. So that's listed with each one there. And I think that's it unless there's questions. Oh, Michelle's calling me. I'm gonna mute for a minute. Paul, if you want to take it over.
Yeah.
If she could connect with the Zoom link on her phone, that would be really great.
All right, so that's what we have here. Our goal is to have kind of a top 10 from the board. So I think there's like Maria's, hers had the most connections with at least one other board member. And then we kind of go from there. So board, I'll hand it back over to you. So I think the top 2 are at least solidified, the early childhood and increased funding. And then you have a special ed who had 3 connections to that.
How come we didn't go with academic rigor with 3 connections?
Oh, thank you. So there's 3 with academic rigor.
And if I could recommend where to substitute that, I'd substitute it for the comprehensive school safety. That to me, I read the new position that they're proposing, and it seems very highly political what they're trying to do with it. It's not the intuitive, just improving school safety.
I didn't read the updated one, so I don't know how much it was adjusted. I know that was when I selected, but it went beyond what we would see as school safety. So it went into SEL, having funding for the appropriate personnel to address safety concerns, not necessarily, just initial safety when we're thinking about like pros or it was also social emotional to that. But again, I didn't read the updated one that we.
Yeah, it was specific to some movements and things that might be a little controversial. So it just, I think there was another one that's more focused on the school safety and whatnot, but I don't know. I didn't particularly care for the update.
So with that
given
reminder,
this-
you have one with 5, one with 4, and then now with 2 with 3 who've connected with them. Sorry, Maria.
So this is my first time with legislative priorities. The fact that these are like, say, like I'm looking the top, I think we have some of the top 3 listed. Are those already kind of taking priority based on WSD? So should we kind of focus outside of those or not?
It's really the board's decision. They're advocating for those to be the top 3, but ultimately
okay.
it's your board's decision as to what you want your person to advocate for on Friday.
Gotcha.
So what happens, Maria, is that we're not necessarily taking our list and speaking out, and it's not like WSD ranks them that way. Every board sends in their list, and then from that they compile which ones have rose to the top. So we might put early childhood education in kindergarten preparedness as our number 1. But if everybody doesn't do that, it's not going to be a number 1. I think it was like number 15 last year. So it's not something that gets, the priorities don't get discussed. It's based on what we send in and what all the other districts send in. And then they determine what the legislative priorities are based on all their input from the districts. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
But we as a district, can say this is important to our district. So like we have, a high percentage of poverty. So, that's something that we all say, oh yes, this is something we want, but not every district's going to pick that. So it may not be in the top 10, but it's okay. We can rank things according to what our district feels is important. And that's the beauty of it. And so the things that everybody thinks are important are going to rise up to the top. So.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that they will also present by region. We're region 7, I think it is. So collectively, Central Washington could have priorities that are different than, metropolitan areas on the west side.
That usually, I think, happens at the district area meeting, which is already occurred. So I just want to share that one of the ones that I put on there, which I don't think anybody else did, but it's the declared emergency response liability. And that's very specific for COVID. It's really about asking the legislature to reimburse us for anything that's COVID related, that's going beyond what funding we already got from CARES and any other supplements. So, for PPE and kind of everything related to COVID. So that's a more, I thought, timely for this year. And so I put it in my top 10, but hopefully we won't need it next year. But I feel like our district is not in the position where we can accrue lots of costs for COVID, and that reimbursement would be important, I think, for the state to do. So that's just one I'm going to highlight.
I took
And I
a,
was kind of,
you can go, Julie.
oh, I was going to say, I was thinking similarly by putting in the promptly pass through federal dollars position on mine, because I know most of what we're getting from these emergencies, I don't think it
Okay.
matters whether we declare it when they're the
Copy
federal
is kind of copy
emergencies.
again, so I'm just going to try to listen, but
Michelle, we can hear you.
I went at this a little differently. It seemed to me that, and I think this is of no value when you're one pea in a large bag of peas, that if this is for lobbying. So the ones that you really want, if you were a powerful player, would be the ones that are likely to be achievable as lobbying action, and also perhaps within a time framework. So there's some priorities that are not directly leveraged in lobbying that are nevertheless huge priorities, but they might be diffuse and don't have a specific platform that you could put in and lobby for in the legislature. Or I also thought about COVID timely things, as Michelle said. And I guess my reaction is we're probably setting priorities that will take longer to happen. And so I think if we rank the way we've done it, I'm quite comfortable with that. But I did want to point out that there'd be two ways of approaching it. One is what's achievable based to specific actionable things that can be done and are likely to be legislatable, and what's your real priority that you're going to work on in a different way.
So given what, yeah, I think no matter what, the COVID response or declared emergency response liability is probably going to rise to the top of the conversation no matter what, because it's on everybody, everybody's plate. We've all got to deal with it. If it's important to the rest of the board members, I'd be willing to, substitute one of my other priorities, if we felt like we wanted to add that to the list that goes forward to the assembly. If that's helpful at all, or if we just collectively decide right now that, that we're willing to put that on our list. I hate to further, this state of a pandemic, and seems like we've had other issues, before this, that have all taken away from our focus on strategic visioning. And, as a district, as a state, and as a nation, it feels like we are less about, what's the big picture and how are we going to implement, something for the greater good in the long run. So I hate to put more emphasis on focusing on the emergency, even though it feels like we have to, because early childhood, I've been involved in conversations with that for over a decade now, and feel as if relatively little has been accomplished. And I don't want to let that go, because I think it's pretty darn important. And the longer it goes on, the more maddening it really is, because it's, early childhood preparedness for kindergarten, in the long run makes our district, and every district that implements it, far more efficient. It impacts our criminal justice system, our social service system. I think it impacts economics and poverty, and it's just got broad reaching impacts all across the board. It impacts graduation rates even. So not to focus on that one thing, but that's my long-term vision, is that we do something about that. I don't mean to negate all the other important items like special needs and poverty and all the other issues. So that's my argument against focusing on the emergency even more, but I'm willing to do it.
I would
keep
agree with Laura
in the
on
top
not
10.
focusing on short-term things.
Oh, did you just put that there?
I just did.
Oh.
The magic of Google. So it can be in the top 10. Because that's what we put in there are your top 10. Not sure where it needs to be at on the rank order.
Yeah, I don't have a, I'm not willing to die for this particular proposal. My only suggestion is because we are affected by COVID and our dollars are affected, that this might be a priority for other districts, but we're also losing enrollment because we're online as well, and that might be a higher priority for districts as well. But I do think there are some time related or time sensitive types of things that might rise to the top, just because of the needs that we've seen increase with online learning. So I don't care if that goes to number 10 or not, but all I'm saying is that because it is COVID, I think it's okay if we have something on there related to COVID, but it's okay if it's not. But I don't think we need to spin our wheels for this. But my audio is very kind of on and off. It's okay for right now, but it kind of goes in and out. So I just want to let you guys know I'm available all day Friday. I'm planning on participate. If our person who's voting has to leave, the WSD actually has a way that that if the voting person is not going to be there, then somebody else can kind of like tap in and be the new voting person, and you can switch back and forth. So if whoever's the voting person, whether it's Julie or Laura, or whoever, if somebody needs to leave to go to a meeting or, meet with a client or whatever, there's flexibility around that. I just want to let you guys know that. So, and they've done that at the assemblies in the past, but for the online assembly, it's the same way. I clarified that with Tim Garchow the other day. So, so I'm just going to let you guys talk about the priorities. My audio is kind of, like I said, off and on. I just wanted to let you guys know that and know that I'm available. So that's all I have. Thanks.
And Julie's the listed board member with WSD as the voting member. So Julie would just need to decide based on your workload for Friday, Julie.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it on my calendar. I'm available to be there all day, but for sure, if it's just by Zoom. So if anything happens, I'm happy to hand over the credentials.
And the baton.
I assume we'll be able to see who's on, like if you have to leave for some period of time. I hope you can see whether Michelle or I or any of the other board members are there.
I would probably just shoot one of you a text if for some reason I was gonna be out. I think, yeah, I don't know how they'll have the view participants set up, but I was reading about that flexibility to pass the votes and how other folks can participate and whatnot, just to make sure.
That's pretty awesome that capability is there.
We might start doing this going forward.
Yeah. What are the hours? I'm not seeing the hours. I'm not looking in the right place, I'm sure.
I looked at the conference schedule. I think there's the handbook that was sent out
Oh, yeah.
yesterday
There's the
has
handbook,
the
yep.
agenda on it. That was the question I had is, it looks like if I'm reading it right, the
Woo.
Sorry. Reorganizing.
legislative positions is 12:30 to 5:30, and everything else is more at the beginning, the adoptions of procedures and other deliberations.
Yeah. I would agree that yes, the real action.
So, and that's just what I wanted to clarify is our role with respect to these legislative priorities is just that second half of the day. Is that accurate?
When I was there last year, it was.
Oh,
You're muted,
mute.
Paul.
It was the second half of this day that it became really engaging for the boards, the board members. The morning was a little bit more technical.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm using technical as opposed to boring. So
There is some tedium involved. That's
There
for
is.
sure.
So is this the list that we want the board to go forward with?
I think so.
I'm okay with it.
I think it looks good.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Julie, it is yours.
great. Fantastic. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Okay, so going back to our agenda, wherever that might be on my screen now. I've lost it. We have superintendent report next, if there are no other board communications.
All right. Just one brief piece, just keeping the board updated that we're working on our hybrid plans. Just really trying to make sure we're reviewing what we had already talked about at the secondary level that's in our smart restart, and ensuring that we are being consistent across the board. Really, Mike is engaging principals, and then from there, there'll be a smaller group of teachers, and just really making sure that we have the hybrid piece down, because as the board member said earlier, we're hopeful that there will be a return back to school at some point in a hybrid. But we just want to make sure that we're ready for that. And then Stacy's doing the same at the elementary, where she's engaging principals and others around what does that look like at the elementary level. Because if you remember right, in our original plan way back when, elementary was coming back full. There was no hybrid involved there. So the elementary is having to do a little bit more new work, where the secondary folks are just reviewing and making sure that's the plan they want to move forward with. So hopefully at that next board meeting, Mike and Stacy will be able to share a little bit more as to where we're at and what we're doing. I will be on a entire Eastern Washington superintendent call. I think that's Thursday, and learning from other hybrid plans around the state, those who are starting to jump into that work. What we're seeing is kind of early to mid-October, there's some districts who've been given the approval to move forward by their health administrators. So we're going to be learning from them, hearing their about the work that they've been doing. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So that is our update right now. The work in the schools keeps going forward. A lot of positivity, but the overall feel is this is really hard. This is really hard for students, staff, parents, and that if you have different types of challenges in your lives, it becomes even more challenging. So we're hopeful that the numbers keep going down. And that's what they are. We see the incident testing is going down. And the prevalence testing that was done in some smaller communities has been significantly lower. So those are some good signs for us and why we're kicking into gear more conversations around hybrid.
I think also, one thing we have heard from a few members at least is that, if we're prepared to send students back to school, it seems disingenuous if the school board is not willing also to meet in person with social distancing. So I think that's one thing the board ought to consider is, do we walk our talk when we do that? Do we meet in person?
Laura, I have just a comment on that. So right now, I represent a bunch of boards that are doing that. Basically, Link Transit has gone back to in-person for the most part. They've got the plastic barriers and are making it available for their elected officials to meet in person. The wrinkle is that OPMA proclamation still precludes the public from being present in the meeting. Mm-hmm. So it still has to be it's not entirely legal probably to be able to meet in person just yet if it's an OPMA covered meeting. But we've, a few boards don't really care. And then a few boards are doing a hybrid where they're opening a meeting online or whatever, and then doing like an executive session in person, at least so far, because that part's kind of exempt from OPMA. So we're still in a little bit of a struggle with that proclamation that continues to get extended. But I'm all in favor of an in-person meeting anytime we can get back in person. I will put my money where my mouth is. That is, I'm ready.
I think it would make sense if we get the authority to move to hybrid. Mm-hmm. I do believe it would make sense. We would have to work with Danielle on the making sure that our community members still have access to the board and all of those opportunities. But I'm with you, Laura, that I think if the students are back in hybrid, the board should be back. Again, all of us following all the mitigating strategies and doing our part and doing all those things that are necessary. But I would concur with you.
Yeah, that's what the health district came in and actually like surveyed the room and the panels and told them exactly how many people could be in the room. Right now, like I said, though, because the OPMA precludes the public from being at the meeting, it's only approved for the electeds or the appointeds and the staff that might be present. They're still trying to, do everything else on Zoom.
So one thing also related to that is we received an email from WEA today, suggesting that we would begin to add the Pledge of Allegiance back into our regular board meetings. And I'm not sure how we would do that exactly. Do we stand up and our cameras pointed at our belly buttons, or and what are we pledging to? Or I guess we
have a flag.
And I would like to see an example of how that's working. Are the kids doing it in their classrooms? They are. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we ought to be doing. It's good for the kids. It's good for us. So I would like us to figure out how to manage that. Because that seems like a reasonable request.
I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
That's it for me.
All right, fantastic. I will now adjourn the meeting, just reviewing the schedule next Monday. I know Michelle said her audio was super bad, but we have agenda review on Monday at 11, and Michelle is up for that. And our next meeting is a workshop on the 6th of October from 1 to 3, and that's a continuation of our strategic planning meeting. And of course, that's in addition to the Legislative Assembly on Friday, which is has opportunities from 8 to 8. But the real action, as we talked about, happening from 12:30ish to 5. So
Did we put out any kind of special meeting notice just because a quorum of us might be present online at the event? It's one of those like total abundance of caution things. I don't even know that we have the ability to interact, but just the fact that a potential quorum of us might be present.
yeah.
Should we notice
I'll
something?
I'll double check with Danielle, but I didn't think we did it last year because 3 people went last year.
Yeah, what do we do when we go to conference?
Yeah,
we all
I'll double check. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a good question. So I'll circle back on with Danielle in the morning.
Okay, great. So if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.